Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Voices of Forestry podcast. My name is Seth Stephenson, the communications coordinator with the Arkansas Forestry Association. Today, I am joined by Secretary of Agriculture here in Arkansas, Secretary Wes Ward. Wes, thank you so much for joining me today. I know you've got an unbelievably busy schedule these past couple weeks.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to join you and to talk through a few things. And it has been busy, but it's always great to be able to visit and talk about what's going on. And the Forestry Association plays such an important role, so we're happy to take time to discuss what's been going on lately.
Well, I promise you, we'll keep this quick, and we'll knock it out real quick here for you. But obviously, it's kind of impossible not to talk about it at this stage, but we're going to be talking to Secretary Ward here kind of about COVID-19 and how it's impacted just agriculture in general here in Arkansas. Obviously, we're the Forestry Association, but we are just one part of the bigger whole of Arkansas and agriculture here in the state. So, but before we get into that, Secretary Ward, last episode, we spoke to State Forester Joe Fox, which you are very well acquainted with here at the Agriculture Department. And that he is someone we here in the forestry community know very much and appreciate. And the Forestry Division is a part of the Arkansas Department of Agriculture. So just explain to me and the audience here, what's the overview of that department and your general focus during quote-unquote normal times?
Yeah, well, good question. And so I'll give a little bit of history, and I think a lot of people are familiar with it, but Arkansas is a little bit of a unique state as far as a State Department of Agriculture perspective. So Arkansas didn't have a State Department of Agriculture until 2005 was when that was created. So really, it was Arkansas and Indiana were like the last two states. Rhode Island is another one that has they're a division within a larger Commerce Department, I think, but not a whole lot of agriculture in Rhode Island. But Arkansas was unique in that regard. And so when the department was created in 2005, it brought within it the Forestry Commission, the State Plant Board, and Livestock and Poultry Commission. So really since 2005, Forestry Commission has been part of the department. And so we work with Joe and the Forestry Commission and his team quite a bit. So fast forward to last year during the regular session and the governor's transformation efforts. So that rearranged a few things as far as broader state government, but really solidified forestry being part of the Arkansas Department of Agriculture, the plant industry, livestock and poultry, but then also brought over natural resources, Veterinary Medical Examining Board, Board of Registration of Foresters, and a couple other boards and commissions were brought over under the Department of Agriculture construct. And why that's important, and one of our main goals as part of that, one of the governor's main goals is really to make sure from a state government perspective is that these aligned pieces are all going in the same direction. So for us to be able to have all of the agriculture, industry, forestry, livestock and poultry, natural resources, plant industry, all of those groups working together, going in the same direction, helping each other out was really important. And so, to your point about Joe Fox, our state forester, I listened to that podcast that y'all did with him, and Joe always does an incredible job. And I will say this, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I know that it's true. I think Arkansas has the best state forester in the country, hands down. Joe does an incredible job with the Forestry Commission and with our Forestry Division, and incredible leadership. So well known, not just within Arkansas, but throughout the forestry industry and throughout the country. Respected in D.C. by our delegation and through others that are involved in federal activities. And so he does an incredible job, and we're very fortunate to have Joe here in Arkansas leading the Forestry Division and Forestry Commission efforts.
And so what is before we move on here, what is your role here at the Department of Agriculture, again, on a quote-unquote normal day? Sure.
Yeah. So it's a lot of coordination, really. And so working with Joe, from a forestry perspective, talk with Joe quite a bit. So internally, we'll have a weekly staff meeting for all of the divisions within the department where we touch base and make sure everybody's coordinating and what we're working on and what we're doing. with Joe in the Forestry division. I talked to Joe. I probably talk to him probably more than anybody. I see him first thing in the morning, and I see him at the end of the day as he's coming in. He stops by my office when he's coming in and when he's leaving. So we talk frequently about what's going on in the forestry industry and with the division. But really, from our standpoint, from a department, what we're trying to accomplish, and one of my main goals is to make sure that we're all working together. And making sure that we're all on the same page and accomplishing the governor's directives and working together on federal components that are important to us and to the state, and really just making sure we're doing our part, that we're not missing anything, and moving forward and working for the industry.
Okay. So he just kind of sandwiches forestry in between your whole day then, Joe does.
That's right. He sure does.
So He's keeping us on the forefront of your mind there.
He does. That's good. He does a good job of it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you again before we move on here. So you grew up in Northeast Arkansas, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So you just give us a little background on who is Wes Ward.
Yeah. So grew up in Northeast Arkansas, a small town of Lake City, which is right outside of Jonesboro. So grew up there. My dad was a Baptist pastor, and my mom was a nurse. But grew up, there in Lake City. It's agriculture, like a lot of Arkansas. Very rural, surrounded by agriculture throughout the state, but no different in Lake City. So grew up next door to a cotton gin, a lot of row crop agriculture production in that area. So kind of grew up with the industry. So when I graduated from high school, I joined the Marine Corps. And spent 4 years on active duty before I came back home and went to school at Arkansas State for a degree in ag business. So from there, went to law school at Fayetteville, and then I went back in the Marine Corps. Went back on active duty again. Spent 4 more years with the Marine Corps, and then came back home and did a few things and worked for Congressman Crawford for a little bit, and finished an LLM degree in agriculture and food law. So agriculture has always been very important to me, and I did the agriculture and food law and a master's in agriculture economics. So just have been around agriculture my whole life, and so it's an industry I love and very passionate about. It's our state's largest industry, $21 billion economic impact, and so it's just been very fortunate to be around it and to be able to be involved with it.
Yeah, it's almost hard to escape agriculture, especially in Northeast Arkansas. I worked there for about 2 years, and Bay, Jonesboro, Lake City, just rice and soy as far as the eye can see, just about. So it just kind of makes sense you landed here at the Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, and I tell people a lot of times too, it's interesting when you're talking to people and you're out at different meetings and events that how easy it is for people to forget how big agriculture is in Arkansas. For us that are working in the industry, we see it, we work in it every day. But for people that aren't, maybe they're working in another sector of the economy, and maybe they're not as closely tied to agriculture. It's easy for them to forget about it. And so I like to tell people, like, anytime that you're driving down the road or you get in a plane, just look out the window. That's it. I mean, it's that simple. Just look outside, look out your window when you're traveling somewhere, and that's agriculture, and that's Arkansas. So we're incredibly blessed in Arkansas, and so much production, very diverse production, from forestry, livestock, poultry, specialty crops, aquaculture, row crops. Really, you name it, we do it in Arkansas and do it very well. And that's another key piece of what we try to do within the department, is try to help tell that story. And it's kind of to that same point. It's so interesting how people can forget that when the food, the fiber, the shelter that we depend on every single day of our life, it's the agriculture industry that's providing that. And so incredibly important.
I think it's because I grew up in central Arkansas, in Russellville to be exact. And you don't really see it a whole lot here in the central part of the state. But once you start venturing out, northeast Arkansas, South Arkansas, that's when it really starts to shine in agriculture. So it's crazy. Well, let's move on, if you don't mind, and get to the quote-unquote elephant in the room, COVID-19, and just how exactly it's affected Arkansas, which, correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably this whole last month is really when it's hit us the most, or when it kind of started to hit. So just if you could describe to me what the last month has looked like for you.
Yeah, so I'll back up just a little bit before that, and kind of the chronological order of for us as a department and what we've worked through. So we had a cabinet meeting with the governor back in February, it wasn't about the coronavirus. We were talking about a completely different set of topics. But in that meeting, Dr. Smith from the Department of Health, who's on the governor's cabinet, mentioned the coronavirus. So, hey, here's something that's going on across the world, and we're watching. So no one really thought a whole lot about it, and that was back in February. March 11th, Governor held another cabinet meeting for the specific purpose of the coronavirus, and told us at the cabinet meeting, today I'm going to announce our first case in Arkansas. So that was March 11th, and what seems like an eternity ago after everything the entire state has been through and the country has been through since then. So since March the 11th, it's been full speed ahead, and a lot of times it's just trying to sort through information of what's going on and what's happening and what do we need to do and what needs to happen next. So for us, on March 11th, we were business as usual, and even for the next week, we were business as usual. But we were still watching and trying to pay attention to what we might need to do. So it wasn't very long after that is when the governor announced that for state government in particular, we were going to go to more of a remote work policy. So unless you were a critical personnel that had to be at a physical location to do your job duties, and that job duty was critical, you need to work from home, or find another mechanism of being able to do your job. And so from the very early stages, it was, number one, how do we make sure the department is still operating? And so working through those aspects of trying to get people home, trying to get people where they could do remote work, and working through all those sort of details. And that was important too, because Arkansas has taken a different approach than what a lot of other states have done. So a lot of other states did shelter in place or stay at home orders, but that wasn't the case in Arkansas. So the governor took a very much more of a specific approach and kind of targeted the response efforts for coronavirus. And for us, for agriculture and the people that the department works for and works with, agriculture is critical and it's essential. And so if you look back on kind of separate from the state perspective, but on the federal perspective, it was something that the president even mentioned on March 16th when he had held a press conference and he was talking about essential critical infrastructure and employees, and he said, at that point back in March 16th, was that if you work in these critical infrastructures, you've got a duty to come to work and make sure it's still working. And he even mentioned the medical industry and also the food supply industry and the food supply chain. And so for us, we fit in with that. And so from the beginning, we have known agriculture. It's got to keep working. It's got to keep moving and keep operating. So for us, from a department, is making sure we've got to make sure our services are still operating and still there for the industry to use and provide those programs and services that they depend on. So that's been a big focus. That essential employees and essential critical infrastructure question was a big topic for a few weeks, and I think we've navigated through that. And I do appreciate the governor's perspective on that, on not doing a broader shelter-in-place or stay-at-home order, but to the extent possible, is that we want people working. We want people out doing and continuing to work in their jobs, so that our economy doesn't have the more significant impacts that other states are going to have from sending everybody home. And so spending quite a bit of time on that. But then I would say I would just fast forward a little bit till this past week. As we're looking towards the future, really, it's how do we get everybody else up and running and get everybody who's been sent home back to work. And so the governor recently announced last week on Saturday, April 18th, was an economic recovery task force. And so we're participating in that and having meetings really to try to help answer questions and issues from the industry, to help provide resources that they need, and really try to map out what is it that we can do to move forward to really get our state's economy to recover and back to where it used to be, and hopefully growing again. So that's important, and our role in that task force is even broader than agriculture. And so we've got about a 30-member task force that the governor put together, and that's broken up into 3 committees. And for our committee that I'm a part of is agriculture, grocers, education, and the service sector. And so we're very fortunate to have Mr. Max Braswell on that task force and on that committee and representing not only just the Forestry Association but the broader forest industry in the state of Arkansas, and making sure that we're looking at the impacts that the forestry industry has seen and making recommendations to the task force and to the governor on what we can do to be helpful and help make recovery wherever we can.
So just kind of backtracking just that smidge here. We talked. You mentioned that Governor Hutchinson's targeted approach to everything, and making agriculture, which includes timber and forestry, critical infrastructure. I know we've had some people reach out to us and other groups asking why in the world is that the case, and it may seem kind of silly, but why is agriculture critical?
Yeah.
Not only to us, but to just, I guess, the country even in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that kind of ties back to the point earlier. The agriculture industry provides that food, fiber, and shelter that we depend on every single day. Every single day. They're in like, oh, we can take a break and we can come back in a week and it'll still be fine. It's like we all got to eat. We all got to have shelter over our heads. So that's why it's so important. And so I think that's why the president very early on and dealing with this made that statement about if you work in within these critical industries that it's really kind of a duty. Like we need you to go to work. The country's depending on you. People are depending on you to continue to work and to continue to provide that food, fiber, and shelter that we all depend on. So that's really the main point of why that's so important, and has really kind of been our motivation to do everything that we can to be supportive of the industry and keep it operating as much as possible without as negative repercussions as what some other states are seeing.
Well, with the way that people are snatching up meat and toilet paper in the grocery stores, we'd almost have to work double time at this point to get things back up to normal. But in your, with everything that you've seen here over the past month plus, what sectors of agriculture have been hit the hardest? Have there been any that have been hit more so than others?
Yeah, and I would say we've been looking at several economic reports, and certainly getting lots of phone calls and people sharing concerns of what they're seeing. But a lot of that's projections. The crisis, the pandemic hadn't been here that long, so a lot of what the industry and the economic reports are looking at is what happens, what's going to be the impact if it stays like this for 3 months or 6 months or a year down the road. So I think the short answer to that is everybody, every industry, and every component of Arkansas agriculture is going to take a negative hit. I think maybe with the exception of the rice industry, just about everybody has seen already negative repercussions. And so rice has been one of those shelf-stable products that have gone to grocery stores, so they've actually seen an increase in some of their sales. So it's been good for that component. But for everybody else, there's been negative impacts across poultry. The cattle industry, we've seen some of their reports are showing some pretty drastic numbers. $13 to $15 billion loss, and so they're seeing some significant hits. Forestry is another one. We had a task force meeting today, and Mr. Max Braswell was there and was talking about what does it mean down the road when with the housing starts, and if there's an increase in loss of the customer confidence on going to the stores and buying these products and the wood and paper products that we're used to, that's going to have negative repercussions. And so some of that we know it's having an impact, and we know that if we don't turn it around quick, that it will be pretty drastic for a lot of people. So
what exactly, we've talked about what a normal day for you looks like, but has that changed much or drastically since everything is kind of kicked off?
Yes. Yeah.
Again, a dumb question, I'm sure. But I want to ask what your day looks like now.
Yeah. So for us within the department, so every morning at 8:00 we have what is what's now a Teams meeting. So a lot of people are using conference calls or Zoom. We use Teams, which is an application through Office 365 through Microsoft, and so it's not 50 people getting together and sitting around a table. It's now we all get on basically a conference line, a Teams meeting, and touch base every morning at 8 o'clock. So we do that, and we talk about kind of what's going on with the coronavirus and other big ticket items that people are working on. So we do that. It's a lot of coordination with the governor's office and with the Department of Health that otherwise we wouldn't necessarily be doing that if it hadn't been for the coronavirus. So just making sure we're on the same page with them and talking to Department of Health on particular guidance documents that they're working on or putting out that would affect the industry. Lots of conference calls with NASDA, the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. So we've had frequent calls with them, and that's really just an opportunity for all the state departments of agriculture to talk and discuss and share challenges and share approaches of how we're dealing with things and even identifying challenges that people are seeing so we can be prepared for them. We've had several conference calls with Secretary Perdue. He's been very open and transparent, and I would say just at least once a week we have some sort of conference call with him, and he's sharing what he's working on and what he's doing, and sharing his updates from a USDA and federal perspective. But then also something that's important for us too is that we started an Arkansas agriculture stakeholder group, and we're doing that every Monday morning. So really all of the agriculture organizations throughout the state, a chance for us all to get together and share what's going on, and here's what we're dealing with, or hey, I've got a question about transportation reg. Can someone help us get an answer, or a broad range of topics, especially from the beginning as we were working through this. So we've had that in place for about a month now. It's been a good opportunity to share things that are going on. So just really, how has that impacted day to day? It's stressed the importance of communication and trying to reach out and touch base and make sure people are on the same page, and making sure if there is a challenge that we're aware of it, so we can try to help get answers. And for us, it's also sharing that information with the governor and with the Department of Health, so that they, as they're trying to make decisions, that we're giving them the most accurate and up-to-date information that we can, so that those decisions are most helpful and not unnecessarily restrictive to the industry.
And in a weird way, there seems to be a unity, which I'm sure has been there since the beginning, but a more united front with you and other states and on a federal level, just to kind of work together, like you said, and communicate about how to best tackle this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hate that it takes a pandemic or something like this to bring people together, but if there is a bright spot in dealing with this, it's that it's forged some closer relationships. It's forged those opportunities for people to work together and put, not saying that this happens within Arkansas agriculture, but I'm sure it probably happens in other areas where it's not about me. It's not about a particular interest. It's how do we work together? How do we address challenges? How do we overcome those and help the industry and help the state recover and move forward and do what's best for the people? So
there have been a couple of different waves of relief that have been provided by Congress. USDA and others have provided during this pandemic. What are some of those that have been most helpful to agriculture?
So just here recently, Secretary Perdue, with President Trump, made the announcement on $19 billion worth of assistance that will go to agriculture. So $16 billion of that will be some direct payments to producers, and $3 billion of that will go towards the purchase of food products and commodities. So that was a big announcement, and we knew that was coming because of some funding that was passed through the CARES Act, and so we were anticipating that. And then with the President and Secretary Perdue's announcement, that was shared, and that's moving forward. So still some details that they've got to work out on that, but I think that will be important for Arkansas as a state. But it also again gives us the opportunity to say, that doesn't cover it. So I know that's one thing that Secretary Perdue has said even publicly is even with that amount of funding, we know that's not enough. We know the need is larger than that $19 billion. So we know that there's going to be some additional announcements. I think it's going to be about $14 billion through the Commodity Credit Corporation that's going to be available to USDA later this summer, I think in July. But it's given us an opportunity to look at how those direct payments were made and those food purchases were made, and say, what else within Arkansas agriculture needs help. And so in particular, forestry is one of those. And so it's helped us to spur some ideas and some conversations of, whether it's a direct through USDA program or that exists now, and the funding that's out there now on trying to craft those programs, or if it's additional phases through congressional support of things that we can ask for and try to help get accomplished. And so that's been something that our state forester Joe Fox has been really involved in, and we have that stakeholder call, and we've had Congressman Crawford was on there once, Senator Bozeman was on there, the governor was on there. We're going to have Congressman Westerman on the call coming up, and I know that a lot of people involved in the forestry industry are looking at that of what is it that we can do from a congressional standpoint, from a federal standpoint, to help get some assistance to the forestry industry.
So you kind of said it here just a second ago, and it leads perfectly into my next question, but this isn't something. The effects of this isn't something we're going to just kind of shrug off here in the next week, 2 weeks, however long. So what is it going to take going forward for us to kind of see short-term boosts and then a long-term recovery?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And as part of the Governor's Economic Recovery Task Force, that's been a topic that we discussed this morning as part of our committee meeting. How do we accomplish that? And a lot of that really comes down to confidence, whether that's customer, consumer, public confidence on, hey, I'm going to be okay. I can get out in public. I can start spending. I can start going shopping. I can start purchasing. I can try to get back to a normal lifestyle again. I think that's really what it's going to take to start seeing things turn around. So hopefully that will happen sooner rather than later. And I think the governor sees that, and I think that's why I think the governor and the president both see that. While there are public health concerns, and we've got to do our best to limit that, and anybody that gets sick is certainly unfortunate, and there's been cases of deaths, and that's always unfortunate, and we don't want to see more of those. But we've got to balance those public health concerns with the economy, and trying to get that recovered and moving again. So it's a balancing act for sure, and making sure that we're approaching it in the right, most reasonable and proactive way to move that forward and start seeing some of these things turn around. But I think that's the answer. Is we've got to get that confidence out there for people to get back at it and get back out there. Certainly these programs and these payments are great, but and this is Wes Ward talking, not the Department of Agriculture, but we're spending a lot of money. A $2.2 trillion CARES Act package, that's a lot of money. And if you look at the national debt, where'd that money come from? And so there's a lot of money being used. And so the answer has to be that we've got to get the economy running again. We've got to get people comfortable and get their confidence back up to get out there and start doing business. We can't rely on the government. We can't rely on federal payments or state payments to be the answer. Maybe that's a short Band-Aid to try to get people through a crisis moment. But the answer is we've got to get people back out there.
Well, Wes, thank you again for taking a couple minutes out of your busy schedule to talk to us. We really appreciate it, and all the work that you've been doing over the past month plus. Thank you for your diligent work. So we appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that, and appreciate the opportunity just to talk about what's going on. It's important for all of us, and I know it's important for the Forestry Association And we can't say enough. I can't say enough about the important work that y'all do and y'all's membership of what that means for not just for the forestry industry, but what that means for the entire state of Arkansas and for our country as a whole. And I know that the governor sees that and recognizes that, and the governor's always been a big supporter of the Forestry Association. Always tries to come out to the meetings when he can, and so I know not just for me, but from the governor himself, I want to say thank you for all that y'all are doing, but especially as we're dealing with this coronavirus issue.
All right, well, thank you. And thank you guys for listening to the Voices of Forestry. If you want more information on the forestry industry here in Arkansas, you can visit the Arkansas Forestry Association's website at arkforest.org. That's ARKFORESTS.org. And we also want to thank Some Guy Named Robb /Robb McCormick for the use of our theme song, The Same Love, from his album, The Folkster. You can find more of his awesome music on Spotify and iTunes, or wherever you get your music digitally. So again, thank you for listening to the Voices of Forestry. We'll be back in a month, hopefully with some brighter news to talk about. But again, thank you so much. We'll catch you on the next one.